will eventually start coming through on the right hand side in a moment. So hello everyone and welcome to the Black History Month Dyspraxia live stream. Today we'll be talking about a number of different topics. If you would like to ask any questions to our panel members, then you can put it in the comments. We will be answering questions as we go, as well as at the end of the live stream. But before we go ahead, I'd like to allow everyone to introduce themselves. So we'll start with this way. So Jerome, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Jerome. I'm a London-based person that works in the arts, and I found out I was dyspraxic while I was a young teenager, and I think that was really good.
Wonderful. Alice? Alice, when you're ready?
Yeah, that's feedback.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hi, yeah, now I can hear. Hi, I'm Alice Agriolines. I was diagnosed with Yeah, that's...
Okay, I think we have a delay with Alice. We'll start. Okay, we'll go. We'll move on to Chris. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, hi there. I'm Chris. I'm based. I was initially based down south originally, but I've now moved up north, further north. I'm up in Newcastle at the moment, well, Durham area. I was diagnosed when I was in school. And I've also got dyslexia and dyscalculia as well. My background at the moment is youth work, community work, education, mentoring. But basically, I'm a jack of all trades, really. But at the moment, I'm working in housing. But yeah, anything I can do to help. Yes.
Wonderful.
Should I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, my name's Sade. I was on the last live with Crystal. I'm 28. I live in Leicester. I got diagnosed with dyspraxia when I was about 22. I'm mostly I think I'd consider myself a textiles fashion designer. But I've worked in a bunch of different areas, including some design work as well as manufacturing. So that's me, really.
Wonderful. I'm going to try Alice again. Alice, you might need to refresh your page because I think there's a delay.
How?
Press F5.
Yeah, there is a delay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me now. Great. That's good. That's good. Okay.
I think the delay is still there.
Yeah, what we'll do then is while we wait for Alice to refresh the page, you might need to drop in and out. Alice, if you press F5 on your keyboard, it should hopefully refresh the page for you. I hope that helps. What we'll do is we'll start answering questions and hopefully Alice will pick back up and the delay will disappear for her. So the first question we will speak about is thoughts and feelings after diagnosis and discovery. So this is very different for everyone. So if we start with Jerome, would you like to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was diagnosed when I was roughly 11, 12 years old, starting secondary school. And I didn't at the time really understand anything about dyspraxia. I vaguely heard people talking about dyslexia and such, but I hadn't heard of dyspraxia at the time. And so my school was lucky enough to have some facilities where they're hey, we'll talk to you and support you for anything that you need to work out, discuss, and learn about. But they didn't really know much about dyspraxia either. So they could try and give me as much support as they could about dyslexia, because I'm also dyslexic, but they didn't really know what to tell me about dyspraxia. They were able to tell me oh, it can affect coordination and motor function, but they couldn't tell me a lot more than that, or like, oh, these things are like things that you should do or like shouldn't do, or this would be beneficial or not. They kind of just went, well, you have the internet, go look it up and find some research. And after a little bit, I found that I had like quite bad coordination when it came to sports, and so I wasn't like great at like catching things and stuff like that. And so they're like, well, practice makes perfect. Here's a bouncy ball, bounce against the wall, and just try catching that. And so I started doing that weekend after weekend because that was the information and like support that I'd been given for that.
Wonderful. Chris, would you like to share?
Yeah, so I think of mine, I kind of knew something was kind of a little bit amiss with dropping things and bumping into things and just having a few clumsy moments. But yeah, so I got diagnosed when I was in school. I think I was around about similar age really. I think I was about year 7, year 6, year 7. But I didn't really know I'd been tested as such. But they did a couple of tests and then they informed us. But there wasn't much there wasn't much for the first year or so. There wasn't really much support going on in there. And then I'd moved schools in the meantime. And then when I came to my exams and things, that's when my support mainly kicked in, where I could access scribes, having extra time. I didn't have too much problems with like sport-wise because, like I said, I practiced, and then I managed, and luckily I was into dancing and football and rugby and athletics. So I managed to find a way basically to make up the difference really. But yeah, so I think for me, I was kind of open to knowing what was going on, and obviously then another diagnosis came in as well. So the latest one was the dyscalculia, but that one caught me by surprise because nobody had mentioned that before. But I only got diagnosed once I was at university when I had my test, my education psychologist, and then he took the time out to explain to me what it was.
Wonderful. Shade, would you like to share?
Yeah, so my diagnosis was in university. It was just like, I think I've said this before, like in passing a conversation with a technician on my textiles course, and just talking about how like maths I just never really got. And she said, why didn't you go and just get tested? It might show something. And I was quite hesitant to do so because like stigma of the whole, if there's even anything else, even if it's like dyslexia or something, from the exposure that I've had from my kind of community, which is the Caribbean community, it's very much no excuses. You will find a way to do it, and you can't have any kind of educational weaknesses. But still went and got tested. And yeah, similar like this point, and this was what, 6 years ago. So at that point, there wasn't a whole heap of information. I was pretty much left to look up the stuff myself, and until recently, it's been very much like yeah, like still a lot of things like I was not really like taking ownership of the kind of being dyspraxic, because like just like I'm not sure how it makes a difference apart from like, you know, my coordination, some of my coordination issues, speech issues, yeah, I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, things with maths as well. Yeah, and it's the millions of thoughts going at miles per minute that kind of creates this stutter in my speaking as well sometimes. So yeah, until like I kind of really got into some of the groups recently, like I was still very much unaware of like how I was actually being affected by this thing. So I'm still in a kind of a stage of discovery of like what actually is happening as a result of the neurological condition.
Thank you. Hopefully Alice is at the same speed as the rest of us now. Alice, would you like to introduce yourself and add some thoughts to this?
There still is a feedback. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'm Alice Agriolines. I was diagnosed at age 25 at university. When I was diagnosed, I was told that I was dyslexic and dyspraxic, but they said, forget about the dyspraxia because you'll grow out of it. So I did. I'm still getting feedback. It was only 3 years ago that I found out that the dyspraxia was still there. You don't grow out of it. It's a lifelong condition. So it's only now that I'm learning about my condition and finding out why I find certain things difficult. So it's been a learning journey for me, and only now I'm embracing it.
That's wonderful, thank you. So following on from that, Chris has just dropped out momentarily. He will be back in a moment. So following on from diagnosis, I wanted to talk about what the potential consequences are for a late diagnosis. Many of us were diagnosed at university and later on in our life, some diagnosed earlier. I recognise some people from the chat who have discussed this as well. So we will be keeping an eye out on things that you're sharing with us as well. So if you have anything you would like to bring to the conversation, then do put that in the live chat. Jerome, is there anything you would like to share about this?
Not particularly, because I feel like that I was quite beneficial in finding out at a younger age. So by the time I was sort of going through exams and then university, this was something that I already knew about myself and was comfortable with. And by that point, with exams, I'd gotten I was typing my exams, so I wasn't having issues with my motor skills anymore, and I was given the additional time. So I felt like that definitely gave me it kind of felt like it was re-leveling the playing field, because it's like, okay, I have this extra time and these resources to balance out for the fact that otherwise I do write slowly and always run out of time and feel like I wasn't doing enough in exams and in school.
Wonderful. So you feel like it really helped benefit you being diagnosed at a younger age?
I think it absolutely made a massive difference.
That's really wonderful to hear. Shade?
Well, for me, at first, it didn't make. I don't think I digested it, because by that time I'm like, how? Firstly, how at the age? Then there was kind of like, oh, so that's probably why I have some issues with maths, because I don't think I really have dyscalculia like that. I think it's more of a that I've read about people that have kind of studied dyspraxia, kind of mental processing. It could be to do with kind of spatial awareness. As I've gone on to learn to drive and stuff, it kind of clicked then, but then I started to think retrospectively into some of my learning experiences, and I started to feel really kind of angry about it, and still when I think about it as well, I do feel a lot of kind of anger about it, because I think if my minds were better information, then things could have been less frustrating, and there would have been less kind of negative association with some of the subjects I was learning. I mean, at GCSE level, I did all right, but I started to have a lot of problems during A levels for multiple reasons, and I think that was part of it as well. Not knowing that this was one of those things in the background that could have been affecting the way that I learn. And yeah, I think I still have some hang-ups about what could have been, basically. So yeah, I think that's kind of summing up my feelings.
Wonderful. Alice, would you like to add?
About being diagnosed late. Well, although I was diagnosed at age 20, although I was diagnosed at age 25, I didn't know that I had this. Well, I forgot about the dyspraxia. So I just focused on the dyslexia. So only 3 years ago, when I found out that I still had dyspraxia, everything started making sense. So I took my driving lessons 3 times before I passed. It then made sense why I couldn't ride a bike. I found swimming lessons really difficult. I've been learning how to swim for the last 10 years, and I still can't get the grasp of it. Also, when I worked, because I'm a chef, I worked in restaurants, and for some reason, restaurants just didn't work for me because I had to deal with the noise in the background, the speed, the pressure, having to read all the tickets. I just couldn't get the hang of it, and I didn't know why. But now everything has started to make sense. So yeah, it's still a learning process.
Wonderful. I'm just going to, there's a few questions in the chat that I think are really good that I would like to cover. There's 2 in particular. So there's one that Chloe Alice has just put. Let me see if I can share it on the screen. Wonderful. So Chloe's just said, do you find that having a late diagnosis, you almost grieve a childhood / education experience you could have had, but were denied that? Would anybody like to kind of, I know Shade, you've mentioned that you were quite emotional about that side of things.
Yes, like I totally agree with the childhood that I had, because like I don't know if it's the same with other people from a similar background as mine, but I found that if I didn't learn the way that, say, my dad, who was a maths teacher, would know like how to explain it, then it would have like a really traumatic response as a result. And there's so many things that I can think of. Like I just don't know how to say them really, but like, yeah, like it's just about like being able to how do I explain it? Like this, there's a lot. I'm so sorry. Like my brain's having a traffic jam. Yeah, like having that information would have made everything so much more manageable and so much more easier in so many ways, and I would have had more time to kind of be able to process and be more accepting of myself as I was, understanding that like it wasn't because I, especially with maths and things of that nature, like I completely wrote that stuff off because I was like I just can't, like maybe I'm just too stupid. Yeah, so like now I know that isn't in fact the truth. Like I just needed more time, I just needed more help. Yeah, like I really do grieve for like the child that I was, that they didn't get that kindness and that opportunity.
I think that's something that a lot of us, Alice, you're nodding there as well. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think I can relate to what Shade
said
about growing up. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. So I grew up in I did my primary schooling in Ghana, and then I came to this country when I was 12. So in Ghana, the way they teach maths, you have to learn everything by rote. You have to recite your times table every day. I don't learn that way. But I guess if I had been diagnosed earlier, then maybe I would have got the help. But again, in the 70s, I don't know if anyone in Africa knew about dyslexia, let alone dyspraxia, you know? And I guess maybe I would have got the grasp of swimming, riding a bike. Maybe I could have told them how I need to be taught. But yeah, I didn't know.
That's really great. Thanks, Frank. The other question as well, hopefully it'll appear on screen, is how has dyspraxia impacted you socially in any way? Jerome, would you like to add to that one?
I think this is like a really interesting question, because even though I found out like I had dyspraxia at a reasonably young age, I didn't know what I would attribute to that. I didn't understand like, oh, it affects this as well as these other things. So socially, I was always known as like the clumsy friend, and I'd always be like about just knocking things over, or like if I'm like really deep in a discussion, I'll sort of like forget what my hands are doing, and then suddenly, boom, something's got knocked over one way, and I haven't realized. And that was something that sort of I'd have to put that like back into mind, like, oh yeah, no, this is also part of it. This isn't just, you're not just clumsy. This is a thing. This is something that like you are aware of and you like learning about. And so that still added like sort of new discoveries to me of things that they wouldn't affect me in school, but I would realize them socially, that like these things might have different impacts.
Wonderful. Welcome back, Chris. Is there anything you would like to add to this question?
I think socially, I've been told, socially. So for example, my sister always says that I'm so loud, but I don't realize my own volume. And I know that that's quite common with dyspraxics. Another thing is I find it difficult to read people. So in a group, if we're having a conversation, you can't really tell whether someone is interested or whether they're bored, you know, and also I take things really literally. And that's something that I struggle with. I always take things literally. So I'm struggling with that. I am.
Thank you. Chris, would you like to add?
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, like, I've never had a problem making friends and stuff. I've always been outgoing and personable and, you know, just able to get about. However, it is sometimes the cues, the social cues, sometimes I don't really read them, or I don't really get it sometimes, but I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better at it, obviously, with it, but it's just trying to stay focused when you're having a conversation early, and, you know, just take your time, and you don't always have to be speaking. I feel like you can just get a lot more information just by keeping quiet and, you know, just watching things and just getting the right balance, really. So yeah, so I find it works better when I try and when I just basically try and read the room a bit more. You know, you get better with time, but sometimes you do get it wrong. But it's just a learning curve, really. And just not take it personally and just say, okay, it'll work better next time, whatever. But yeah.
Wonderful. We'll move on to our next question now, which is, how has gendered and cultural stereotypes affected your dyspraxia? We'll start with Jerome. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to really comment on how gender's affected me in dyspraxia, but I think culturally, I found like in school, I think a lot of like somewhat like racial assumptions were made that like, oh, I'm sure you'll be like good at sports, and different teachers would say, oh, you should try out for my sports team, and like, oh yeah, come to like this sports thing, and I would go, and sometimes they wouldn't even like put me in trials. They're like, cool, so you're just going to be playing in this match tomorrow. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sort of go with what you're saying because you're a teacher. And then they'd be shocked when like I wasn't like magically like gifted at this sport, or even like sometimes I wasn't as good as like some other people just because I lacked the coordination for it, really. So like whenever like in cricket, when I'll be in like when I was a fielder, like I just wouldn't be able to like catch the ball or work out really where it was going. And like teachers were like, oh, what's going on? I'm like, I never said I was any good at this. You guys just sort of told me that I'd be good at this and then told me to do it. And it did sort of create an effect of like, year after year, like term after term, I'd try out lots and lots of different sports because they were like, oh, you just haven't found the one that you're good at. And so that to me also felt like it was like almost like different from the dyspraxia. It was just a different, like almost a confidence thing of, oh, I just need to find my sport and then I'll be great at that and that'll be fine. And then it sort of took a while for me to sort of like process, no, actually, that's not just how it works. Like, I just need to sort of like ignore people that are just telling me that I'll be great at this or great at that. I should just take the opportunity to work it out for myself.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing that. Chris, would you like to add?
Well, yeah, I have to say, I'm a male, so I know that in that aspect, it's got privileges of its own. So I'm aware of that. So I wouldn't like know in terms of how my gender has changed, has had an effect on my dyspraxia. However, from the cultural side of it, I just think, I think it's pretty similar to what Jerome was saying earlier in terms of everyone assuming that you're going to be the best at sports or the best at certain things, and sometimes just them not understanding that sometimes it does take a bit longer just to suss things out and to, especially when you're young and you're finding your identity and trying to find your own voice in your own lane. So sometimes it can be with peer pressure as well. So certain things like having to go to like dance, having to go to raves, or having to go to like the football or stuff like that. Things that sometimes I was having a day where some days I'll be having a day where I was feeling clumsy or feeling a bit lethargic or feeling a bit under the weather, not with it rarely, but then I'd feel that I'd have to represent or show or just turn up just because I felt that pressure, obviously to show, to be part of the group. But I've learned along the lines of basically just do what you need to do, take your time, and just get to know yourself and get to understand where your limitations are and where your interests are, and to and the stuff that you are interested in, just try and pursue that or try and get the most out of that. And obviously the stuff and being able to say no. That's another thing. Be able to say no to certain things and not to just burn yourself out or feel like you're obligated to do certain things because you look a certain way or you present a certain way.
That's lovely. Shade, would you like to add to that?
Gender stereotypes. I would definitely say something that has shown up these times of like COVID and being at home is like really how like, you know, doing stuff around the house mostly falls to, I guess, more of the women if there's like a wider family that they're living with. And I think for a lot of dyspraxics, like there's a lot of task management issues sometimes, and becoming easily overwhelmed by the multitudes of things to do. For me, that's particularly one of the more testing things for me, being overwhelmed by all the stuff that needs to be doing and this expectation. I don't think it's particularly a cultural thing in the sense of being a Black person, but just in general being a woman, this kind of thing that you need to have like this kind of intuitive, this expectation of being intuitive of other people's needs. You need to also dictate to other people what needs to be done. You need to, you know, be the person who takes care of a lot of these kind of things around the house. And like, that's really like, it's become so frustrating for me. And it has been a great frustration to me also, like even growing up, because like, when there were other able-bodied men around, and I had like say schoolwork to do and I was already overwhelmed with that, there were other kind of things around the house when my mum was out working and whatever that I'd have to take care of, and me failing to like do those things caused upset, or just like, you know, very bad reactions towards me. So like in the respect of this kind of expectation that I'm kind of going to be like a mini mum manager kind of thing of the household. Yeah, that's a lot for me to deal with. And yeah, like I think this is going to impact on you know, when people, and it's already started because I'm like over 25 now, and when people have been asking, oh, when are you gonna have kids and stuff, and I'm just like, don't think that's gonna happen, because if I had to relive what I've already experienced but with my own kids, yeah. So there's like the kind of impending expectations coming my way of like what I'm supposed to be able to, or what is expected of me to do. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Alice?
I think culturally, for me, dancing has been a big issue because people look at me, I'm an African girl, I've got the form, but there are certain dances that I just can't do. So I've got rhythm, but I can't do certain steps, the sequence. So I can freestyle. If you put me on the dance floor and I do my own thing, that's fine. But in formation, so I did salsa dance class, didn't work for me. Tap dancing, Brazilian samba, I just couldn't get the steps. And people would look at me and say, but you're Black, you're a woman, you should be able to dance. And that has bothered me for ages. And I've met other dyspraxic Black women who can't do it. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. So the next question I would like us to go over, and again, if you have any questions that you would like to ask as we go along, you can put them in the live chat. So the next one, which was suggested, was around religious experiences. If we start with Jerome again, is there anything that you can add to that at all?
I don't think so, actually. I don't really ever feel like my religious experiences and sort of like dyspraxia ever like had any like points of contention or anything like that. I don't really feel like that came up for me at all in my life, so I don't really have much to say about that.
That's fine. Chris, do you have anything to add?
I'm not religious. I wasn't raised in any way to be leaning towards any religion or not. So, no, I don't think I can put
That's okay. Shade?
Oh, I've got plenty to add about this. So, not that it's ever actually happened in a religious setting, but it's more to do with so-called religious people. So a lot of the kind of thing that happens when, you know, whether it's an illness or it is a neurological issue, I don't think there's any kind of distinction. Like if you're just like afflicted with something, right, and you find out, or like you're born with it and it's known from early age and things like that, people are like, oh, this is just like something to overcome, or they'll say it's like demons or something like that. And I've had these things where people are like, oh, it will just eventually be cured with prayer. And I'm like, no, it's really not. Like, I have a lot of issues with things like that. They'll say like it's not of God, like this is like something that like you will overcome, and I'm like, no, like, and it's just something that they will not be receptive to, basically, because I don't think there is a kind of capacity to listen if you're going, or to process such information if you're going to view it through religious scripture in a way. I especially if it's from a literalist kind of viewpoint. And when I'm talking about religion in this thing, I'm going to say it's from a Christian, mostly Black Pentecostal Christian perspective. So yeah, like there's a lot of this kind of like, yeah, it'll get prayed away. Why would, like, I've been asked, why would you go and look for that kind of things? Like, it's not of God. Like, God doesn't want this for you. Like, you'll get better. Like, and I'm just like, you know, this is something that's with me going to be with me throughout my life, and it's not going to get better. I don't know if it's something that gets worse, because I've not been steeped in the literature concerning the dyspraxia. So yeah, like it's just it's just not been a very good experience when it comes to like interacting and telling people with kind of a religious viewpoint about this kind of stuff, because it's often very dismissive and very unaccommodating, and yeah, it's just not great.
Alice?
It hasn't, I mean, I haven't had any religious experiences myself, but I've seen things like that happen in Ghana, especially people who are physically disabled. They are sent, they go to these Pentecostal churches and they'll pray for you. And so I know, for example, if there were children in Ghana who were going through this or who've been diagnosed, a lot of them might be going to these churches for prayer to get rid of this. But some people also think that they've been cursed, or it's something that you did in your past life. That's why you've got this condition. I'm lucky that I got out of Ghana at age 12. So maybe that could have happened to me. But remember, I wasn't diagnosed until age 25 here. But I'm sure if I had stayed in Ghana, definitely, I would have been thrown into that.
Yeah, if I can add something just on the end of like, if I'd stayed, if I'd grown up in Montserrat in the Caribbean, it would have been the same thing. When I went back maybe about 4 years ago now, and I had a conversation with somebody and I mentioned, you know, with some of the things I found out, I didn't say like I've got dyspraxia at that time, but I did say with some of the things I found out about the way that I learn and stuff, I don't know if it would have been the greatest of things for me to stay there. Like I'd already, while I had already been assessed by a speech therapist from a very early age when they had concerns about my speech, which, you know, could be an indicator of my future diagnosis of dyspraxia. They basically said, like, you know, I'm very talkative, so it'll probably improve with time. And, you know, it did, but I still noticed some things about my speech. That being said, when I spoke to this person, they were like, no, basically, there's no excuse. You will just have to do and excel and all of those things here, because that's just how it goes. And I'm like, well, thank goodness for that. But like, you know, things happened how they did for me to end up here, because I really do think I'd be a lot worse off mentally and in terms of confidence and everything else. So, yeah.
I used to be part of the church. From a young age, I was kind of on and off because my family very split on religious experiences. But when I went to uni, I decided to start going back again. And I remember speaking to one of the gentlemen who went, and he basically told me that he didn't say cursed, but he basically said that it'd been bestowed upon me because I'd sinned in a past life, and I was being punished for the things that I'm doing in this life. And back then, when I was having conversations with people, I really struggled. So my sentences were really being mixed up and wasn't understanding very well. It was a very unpleasant conversation. And then the following week, he decided that he was going to speak at the thing. And the whole thing, I swear, was based on the interaction I had with him, because he was saying how people who, like me, are basically a punishment from God, and we've been sent to punish non-sinners. So like, I was testing him, and I've done all these awful things, and I'm a devil basically that's been sent to test people, and it was horrible, and I never went back ever again.
Wow.
It's some strangeness, but other than that, it was nice. But after that interaction, I was like, I'm not letting that happen again.
Wow.
Okay, so we've got a few other questions here that are listed. So here's one I was hoping to cover. What does it mean to be a Black dyspraxic? What does it mean to you personally? And, you know, what would you like to share to other Black dyspraxics who might be going through similar experiences as you? Jerome, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think to me, it's a lot about being comfortable in the fact that, like, growing up, there were things that I was still trying to work out about myself, and like my coordination and like my fine motor skills and stuff like that. And it was being able to say, okay, well, I'm not the best at this or I'm not the best at that. That's fine. I can like take that time and like acknowledge that about myself. And rather than just saying, oh well, it's because like I'm not like trying hard enough, and like something that I know a lot of Black people are told is we have to like work twice as hard to get half as far. But also with that, along with finding out I was dyspraxic, it's sort of like, well, maybe it's not always about just trying to push through something where I just think differently about it. Maybe it's about like, is there some other way that I can get help to get back to this point? Is there like something else that I can do that can benefit me? So like when I was like having issues with like my writing speed, I was I got given a laptop and extra time and touch typing lessons, and that just revolutionized everything. It wasn't just, oh, I needed to like just sit there and practice writing day after day. There was another option, and there was something that like without the correct support like at school, I may not have been aware of, and I think that could have like massively impacted me. And I just think like sort of, you know, to be comfortable in your own skin and know like, okay, well, what this person or that person like says that I should be good at or bad at doesn't have to be like the like be all and end all. It's like it's myself that I'm talking about here. I know me better than anyone else does, so I should be able to like feel confident in my decisions that I make, rather than feeling like that's a massive impact from like an outside force with an external person.
That's lovely. Chris, are you available to share
yeah,
your
yeah.
Lovely.
So I think I've got someone visiting, but 2 seconds.
Okay.
All right, I'll be quick in this one. Yeah, so what it means to be back in dyspraxic. Yeah, so you've got a mixture. You've got identity, and also you've got disability as well. So I think being Black and dyspraxic means that you're ready. You've technically 2 seconds. I do apologise. 2 seconds.
That's okay. I say we'll come back to Chris. He's got a bit of a he wants to be involved.
Okay.
What we'll do is if we Alice, would you like to share your thoughts?
Okay. What it means for me, being Black and being dyspraxic just means that you have to work maybe 50 times harder than your average white counterparts, because being Black, going to school in this country, your parents tell you from the get-go that you're Black. Because you're Black, you're going to have to work harder. Then you've got the dyslexia on top of it, dyspraxia, and you're a woman. So all my life, I've known that I've had to work harder. But what I think that's made me have a really good, strong work ethic. And I'm very resilient because I've just known that I just have to do my best or more than that. So yeah, that's what it means for me.
Lovely. Shade?
Much of what Alice has said, really. On top of that, I will concur about being comfortable in your own skin. For me, that's been very, very difficult. But it is something that you need to like really get a handle on. Like if you can get into therapy, I recommend the right therapist. For all my life, I've been having therapy pretty much, and I've only ever really had one good therapist that made me really get a grasp on some of my issues. And at that point, dyspraxia wasn't the thing that we were focusing on, but like it kind of reframed some things. But as well, like really, yeah, like you know, like I said, I grieve kind of like the child that was, like really kind of reanalyzing and reshaping those memories as well. And a lot of the things that you blame yourself for is not your fault. And understanding that it is to your advantage to work outside of this kind of general framework that has been set for you. Like there is sometimes though that I definitely think that it seems to work against me, but a lot of the opportunities I wouldn't have had if I had done stuff the prescribed way. So yeah, look at your dyspraxic. For me, to be Black and dyspraxic is to look at like my skills and my abilities and seeing like, yeah, my difference is something quite truly amazing, even though sometimes it seems like it's not. It's something that I really actually like about myself. So
that's really lovely. Thank you for that. Chris has had to head off now, unfortunately, but I'm really thankful for him joining us. We're going to answer one more of our questions that we've already set out for ourselves, and then we will open up questions to the rest of you guys. So please do use the live chat to ask questions, and hopefully we'll get round to asking some. So the last one that we've got here, I'm hoping I've gone through all the others, is disclosing your dyspraxia. We see this question a lot within the community, and it's been asked a lot, especially since Dyspraxia Awareness Week, because there's a lot of kind of confusion around when someone should disclose, whether that's with your social group or with your work. So if I ask my guests what they would kind of do around that area, Jerome, would you like to start?
Sure. So personally, for me, with disclosing my dyspraxia, in like more social settings, I've usually disclosed it like when I felt like it's relevant. I don't sort of like go, okay, well, I'm meeting these new people, let me make a point of saying this. It's more I go, okay, well, this like something relevant has happened, so I'll mention it. But really, I'm quite interested in like when in a work environment. Personally, I tend to disclose it sort of like as I'm sort of starting the job. So I work in the arts. I work like quite like physically, so I do lots of different things, and it's lots of like coordination is sometimes required, and it's just like physical activity. So I mentioned that to like my bosses that that I was dyspraxic and also dyslexic, and I said, hey, this is what this is. This is what this means to me. This is how it affects my life. But basically, these are the only things that I really think it'll affect in the job. I just want to let you know that from the get-go, so that we don't get to a point where they ask me to do something that I may not be or may not feel as comfortable as capable doing. Like I've already disclosed it, so we don't reach that awkward point where then I feel like I have to tell them, or I've been hiding it from them, or they feel like I've been hiding it from them. It was just out in the open, and they're like, okay, cool, we can work with this. That's fine. You're not, asking anything outrageous. You're just letting us know, and that's good. And so I felt personally like letting my work know, like as I was being offered the job and saying, great, I'm lovely, like it's be lovely to work with you guys. I can't wait to start. Just so you know, I'm dyspraxic, and this is what that means to me. And that's how I went about that, and I thought that really worked for me. But of course, everyone's like interactions are different, and everyone's own individual. So whatever really works for you and you feel comfortable with.
Lovely. Alice?
I'm quite the opposite, actually. I tend not to tell people. I know I should, but for me, there's still a stigma attached to it. So in a professional setting, because I'm a chef, nobody knows, actually. I'll be honest with you, nobody knows that I have dyspraxia, let alone dyslexia, because I just don't want to be treated differently. But I think I have to agree with Jerome that if it's going to affect your work, then maybe it is a good idea to know. But I think I'm still struggling with it, because remember, even though I was diagnosed at age 25, it's only in the last 2 years that I've started, embracing it. So, for example, when I go for my swimming lessons, I've started telling my swimming teacher that I'm dyspraxic, so I need to be taught in a different way. And that worked. But especially in the Black community, I don't tell them, because I haven't had any good feedback. When I've told people, whether it's family or friends, one, they either don't believe me, they think I'm using it as an excuse, or they don't understand it. So there's a stigma for them. So because of that, I've just kind of shut off. But I'm trying to open up a bit more, and hopefully that will maybe it's up to me to educate them. I don't know.
it's definitely a learning curve, but I think a lot of us are in the same position as you, Alice, or we've all gone through that stage. It's like the 5 stages of grief of like denial and eventually acceptance.
Yeah.
And I can see in the comments as well, there's a few people who've said they're very much in the same boat as you. Shade?
For me, I've done both, not disclosed and disclosed. So I think up until recently, when I've done job applications, I've never said that I have a disability. Firstly, because it's never been described to me as a disability anyway. They were just like, it's just like a neurological difference, or it's just a thing that you deal with. It was never broken down to me like that. So I think if there was proper information about it, I think I would have approached it a lot differently. The last job I disclosed it to, it was actually an apprenticeship. So I was both in an actual manufacturing setting as well as in the classrooms. In the classroom, it was understood because it was a college who was dealing with this. So in terms of doing the written work and stuff, we were given laptops and everything like that. So there wasn't really that issue. They helped us proofread work. And I was relatively okay with managing time because I was one of the older students. So by then I was like fine with that kind of stuff. But now when it got out into like the actual hands-on work setting, it wasn't taken seriously. Like we would work in different, what they call tact times. So times allocated to doing each product basically. So when I was on the shorter one, it was a hard adjustment, but like there were less things there were less tasks to keep track of. Now, when it got onto the longer tack time, which was up to 30 minutes, there started to be issues. And part of those issues actually were from me noticing that I was actually being given more than the tack that I was supposed to do. And the other part was that there was just a lot of things, and I explained I just need an adjustment time. Like I will get it, but it will take me longer than this kind of training window that they have. And I further broke that down when there started to be even bigger issues, because like it just kept blowing up and blowing up, because there were a lot of like male egos in that workplace, which was a whole different thing. But when I further explained this to somebody who was actually in the union, I said, look, this is the thing, this might be what it is. I broke it down and explained some of the coordination things, because obviously it's a very hand-on job. And he basically told me like, and it's something that you've said that occurs with dyspraxics, like they don't process things until a while afterwards. And I didn't process what he had said to me until a while afterwards, and a good while afterwards. And he basically told me not to mention it to my area manager. And I was just like, when I finally like processed what he'd said to me, I was like, how can that be okay? Because then how can I properly do my work as well as I can? And it's something that I know I can do, but like I said, it's going to take me a bit longer, but I'll get it. And nothing will tell me that in like the kind of working metrics that they had, that I wasn't pushed down further in terms of the working metrics, in terms of getting a job and being one of the first to be cut earlier in this year for like work that didn't work against me. So yeah, like I feel very aggrieved about that whole situation. And either way, like I don't see any plus points to disclosing. And I will continue to disclose, of course, because that's the best way for me to get the best working environment. However, like to me, it seems to narrow my work prospects in a way, like when they kind of fully understand that this is something that will affect me, which will then affect them and possibly will affect their bottom line, regardless of their size of company. And even though that they have said that this is reasonable adjustment, which is for me was a little bit more time, it's something that's supposed to be there by law. They're obviously not abiding by these things. So yeah, in terms of work, I don't know what to tell you guys. Like it just is whatever. And I think with the work situations being as they are, I don't feel optimistic about people with, say, dyspraxia or anything that ever affects them in terms of mobility or coordination. Like, things are going to get better because of how intense the job market is going to be as a result of the whole COVID situation, and, you know, whatever economic consequences there will be as a result. So I don't know, like, if to say like yes it's great or no it's not, but like I would still advocate for disclosing as a way of advocating for oneself, because otherwise you will not find a workplace that will like treat you well and give you those reasonable adjustments in terms of social. I've mentioned it in terms of, like, you know, when I've been in group chats and things move super fast and like there's just like egregious like spelling errors and grammatical things, like, yeah, I'll mention it there, and most people are just like, oh yeah, that's fine. But like, yeah, like I've said, if it's like, you know, people older than me who probably don't understand these kind of things, or like from a religious circle that I've been in before that I'm no longer involved with, yeah, I keep it very hush in those situations.
You raise a really valid point, which is something I've not really thought about much. But with COVID, there's a lot of people at risk of being made redundant at the minute. And one thing my dad said to me recently was to try and appear as much like everyone else as possible, so that you're not seen as if someone who might be struggling in an area. Because if people have to make redundancies, it will be the stronger people that they keep. And unfortunately, it will affect people who have disabilities and who might take a longer time on that, which is really devastating. And I think it's awful. But businesses also have to think about themselves as well. So it's one of those things that there is no balance for at the minute. And they have to be harsh on things like that. It's awful, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. And so choosing how and when you disclose, especially at the moment, I think you just have to use your best initiative, get to understand a little bit about the people who you might be telling. But also sometimes disclosing can be in your benefit, because if people start to notice that you're struggling and you don't say why to ask for help, they may be able to help you, which will then get you back on track. Whereas it's a bit like one of those if you don't ask, you don't get kind of things. But again, you're at risk of things. So at the minute, I understand there's a lot of stress around that, because it could go one of two ways. And we've also got a question, which I'm going to bring up on the screen. And I think a number of us can kind of empathize with this, which is from Sarah. It says, do you ever get treated like you're completely incompetent? I still am. And I think a lot of us kind of say that sometimes when we disclose disabilities, that's how we're made to feel. Would you guys agree with that?
Not entirely, but I do. So I've had experiences where like I've disclosed that I have dyspraxia, and it's clearly someone's like, they've gone, oh, I've heard about that. That means you have like some trouble with some things. So let me just do everything for you. And that way I'm like being a good ally, and that's being helpful and everything. And I've sort of gone like, well, no, because now you just want me to stand here and not do anything. And that's not benefiting anyone, because you're working twice as hard trying to do the work of two people, when you could just carry on and let me do my job like I am trained and able to do. But I feel like once sort of I realized what they were trying to do, I then went, no, I can do this. Like, this is fine. Like, don't worry. Like, carry on doing what you're doing. But I can do my job. Don't you worry about that for a second. Like, once I did that, most of the time that's like solved the problem. But sometimes like you do find like, especially when I'm working with people like significantly older than me, and they think, oh well, they know best, and they don't fully understand. So they're like, oh whatever, I don't need to like take the time to understand what this means to you. I'm just gonna move you out of the way and do this myself. And then I sort of go, no, I still know what I'm doing. I'm still gonna work twice as hard to like prove that I am definitely capable of doing what I know I can. Just to almost like prove to them, like whether they care or not, that I can do these things.
Lovely. Would anyone else like to add to that?
Yeah, I think for me, that's one of the reasons why I don't tend to disclose, because I don't want to be treated like, I'm incompetent. I have had incidents where I've been treated like that, whether it's on the phone and I've told them that I'm dyslexic, and they'll say something like, oh, I didn't realize you couldn't read. But that's not what dyslexia is about. So if in my setting, I disclose that I'm dyspraxic and I'm working as a chef, they might think, oh, she's going to be dangerous in the kitchen. But so do you see why I'm a little bit reluctant to tell?
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm a generally quite no nonsense person, and I'm really quite assertive of what my needs are in general, and because in general, like, people seem to think like I'm somewhat well spoken enough, and as well, like, I guess I'm not very expressive in certain situations that I don't so, like, I probably what you would describe as masking. I probably mask some of my expression. They see me as quite stern. So when there has been those situations where they've like tried to kind of overtake because they're aware of whatever difference it is that I have, then I'm like, no, I prefer to do that myself. Like, I just need, like, maybe I need your assistance, but I don't need you to totally overtake my job for me. And I'll make that quite clear, and usually they listen. So, like, I think if you want to get past that people treating you as incompetent, then it really is about like being quite vocal about it, and it's not easy. Like, even my heart literally feels like it's going to jump out of my chest when I have to like raise an issue. If not, then if they don't listen, then it's for you to escalate, and hopefully somebody above them in HR or an area manager or whatever it is will deal with that on your behalf. Because I really think that it's beyond ridiculous for like grown people who clearly have decent ability to be like babied by other, like, whoever it is, if it's in the workplace context. If it's in like your personal life, then it's really about, if it's family, then it's really about breaking it down to them and making it very clear and creating distance if they continue their behavior. If it's friends, much the same, but like it's easier to like, distance yourself from those people because they obviously don't respect your autonomy in that sense. So
it's a bit like having boundaries.
Yes, very much so.
And I think that's really important as well, is setting boundaries for yourself on what you'll allow from people. And some people think that they generally think they're doing something nice for you. As Jerome said, they think, oh, don't worry, I'll do that for you. And it's just kind of, it is scary standing up for yourself. Your heart does race. It's like, no, oh gosh, I just told someone no. Wow, that can be terrifying. So I think we've come up to an hour now. So I've got one more question, which is actually for Alice.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it will come on screen, so I'll read it out for you. This is from Chloe. And it says, I'm curious what led you to become a chef, and how did you overcome any dyspraxic barriers to the role, like fine motor issues?
Okay, it wasn't my passion. It wasn't my dream to become a chef. So when I finished school at age 16 and my results were so bad, I came home to my African parents. And of course, having Ghanaian parents, I had to have all A's, and I was either going to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. And they looked at my results and thought, oh, what do we do with this one? So I remember my dad saying to me that your life is over. And I took the results to my mum, showed it to her, and she said, why don't you become a chef? Because you're good with your hands. So that's when I went off to chef college. I trained to be a chef, and I ended up being really good at it. So as a dyspraxic being a chef, I think that was the best coping mechanism for me, because not only was I a chef, I was a pastry chef, which was so delicate, lots of detail. You have to measure, everything has to be so exact. So I have to say, being a chef has been a blessing for me, because I could have been quite clumsy, but I think the chefing trained me. So now in my adult life, my coping mechanisms are quite good. I drive every day. Because I drive every day, my spatial awareness is quite good. I can reverse with one hand. So I think my training, although I didn't want to be a chef, it's actually helped me in the long run. So yeah, I'm grateful for that.
That's really amazing to hear. I've heard similar stories of people where they've done the opposite of what people would normally say for a dyspraxic.
Yeah.
And you know, and there's a lot of people who worry about the whole can't do it, never will do it, therefore won't do it. And I think sometimes it is a case of, if you can allow yourself the patience and the time and the practice, you can, you know, very similar to what Alice has done, is she's managed to perfect those skills. Because with dyspraxia, a lot of people don't realize that once you get past the barrier, you will actually perfect those skills more than a neurotypical person. And it's something that is not spoken about very much. So if you can perfect your area, you will generally do better than your peers. So hearing that Alice is able to do that is really uplifting. So thank you so much for sharing that.
If I can add to that, having worked in a very similar kind of thing where you have to use all these fine motor skills, like literally that's all I've done throughout my whole life. Textiles and such depends on these fine motor skills, and I've never ever, I think this is the opposite but good side of my parenting, is like never to be dictated to about what you can and can't do. You'll do it eventually. And that's that. Even though that wasn't implicitly said to me, that the eventually part, it was always like, obviously there's no such thing as can't, and my mum would always say nothing beats a trial but the failure to try. So I kept trying. Like all the stuff that I do textiles wise, I've had to do like hand stitching for leather goods and all that kind of stuff, and if I didn't get it right first, I'd always get it right eventually. The same in the manufacturing field, I got it right eventually, even if I wasn't allowed the opportunity to continue to do it. And I still continue to do stuff with my hands, things like needlework and all of that kind of stuff, precision cutting and any number of things. Similar things to language acquisition. Like I'm big into like self-teaching myself languages, and I know a lot of people are kind of intimidated by that because of the writing side. Like, don't be intimidated by it. If it's something that you want to do, you'll find a way. Like I've had to cycle through so many different learning processes to get to there, and it takes me longer, but when I finally find a way of doing it, it's like exponential learning curve. Past, like, you know, like how bars go like that, like it just kind of keeps going, and it takes a very long time before I plateau, and usually that plateau is way after the point that a lot of that, you know, evidential charts show. So yeah, just like, yeah, don't be limited to that. Like with the driving thing too, like my spatial awareness has been absolute rubbish. My front wheel is a wreck, but like this is my 5th year of driving, and everything has just like been pretty much perfect. Like reaction time, parallel parking, absolutely everything. So like, don't be discouraged. Like it is like very stressful. It is like very difficult. You will cry loads. But yeah, like if I've never seen myself as a role model, but like if you want to look at like my experience or Alice's experience for some inspiration, we'll be the first people to tell you don't look at us, because we're just like we're just not those kind of people. But yeah, like use us as your measure and go beyond that in your experience.
That's wonderful. The drive thing I can relate with. I have a massive scratch all the way down the side of my car. It's been there for nearly 2 years, and I leave it there as a warning sign to not park too close to me. And it works in my favour. You know, and you know, as you said, like it will take a long time to get there, and for some people that can be very discouraging. I know that as a kid, I was sat at the table doing homework, bawling my eyes out, flat out refusing, just being like, it's never going to work, I'm going to fail, I'm not going to be good at anything. And actually what I exceeded in now, it took me a very, very long time to get there. But if you can persist and be kind to yourself, use nice positive words, it can be so easy to be horrible to yourself, but you can get there. It is possible. Here are examples. Here we go. Well, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being on the panel with me, and Chris, who had to pop off earlier. You have been wonderful. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And thank you also to everyone in the live chat who has shared their questions and also shared their experiences along with everyone. Hopefully the next panel that we will be doing is dyspraxia for parents. So that's dyspraxic parents with children. Don't know when that will be, but it will be eventually. So thank you again, and we will say goodbye.
Bye. Bye.